Which of the dinosaurs in Jurassic World Evolution could actually be contained?
Whoa, hold on. Bumpy. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Chamber of the Wraith. My name is Brian, and today we are going to be tackling the final part of this unusual concept. Well, not unusual. That is the wrong word. It is interesting, though. And it's the concept that in MK11 we'll be getting more variation slots on top of the 3 variations. I know that this was originally Tom Brady's idea. I linked it in the original video discussing it. I think I forgot to link it in the addendum, and if I did, I will link it in there, and will definitely be linked here. However, we're going to go through every single character, once again, in order to just very quickly just talk about what new moves they could have. Now, it's hard to do this because with most characters, you really can just imagine just about anything for some of these characters. Like, Shang Tsung's a warlock, so why not give him some crazy warlock shenanigans? Or, why not, or perhaps you can imagine Scorpion getting some kind of new fire magic attack, like a command grab or something. But I want to do my best to split the new moves into 3 categories. Something we've seen before, something brand new, and something they might need. And I say need a little bit loosely. And the reason why I say need is because the game might need a little bit of, or the game to some people needs a refresh, needs more combos and things. So that's what I mean by a need. And some characters might genuinely need help. Looking at you, Shao Kahn, and Scarlet, according to some people. So we're going to start from the top and work our way down, because last time we worked from the bottom and went down. So first up is Shang Tsung. Now, Shang Tsung is an interesting character because most of his classic moves are already here. We have the Hellfire, the Enhanced Skulls, and the Morph, as well as his Soul Steal. But a new move that he can have that we have not seen or a new move that we've not seen with Shang Tsung before, is something else involving the body drop. Instead of the body coming down, the body gets thrown forward. Maybe Meat makes a cameo where he comes in and throws a dead body at the opponent instead, and it replaces the corpse drop, but because of how slow the projectile is, it's invincible. Alternately, Shang Tsung can just grab Meat and throw Meat at the opponent as an amplify. Something old that Shang Tsung has not had in a while. It's hard to say, but why not make a reference to Mortal Kombat 2, or was it Mortal Kombat 3? I think it was MK3. He had a fatality where he summoned spikes and he threw the opponent onto them. This could be a command grab for Shang Tsung that we've not seen before. You know, we've never seen Shang Tsung with much of a command grab. But Geras may have this move already, but we can give it different properties to make it different. It could be a side switch, for instance. And it could potentially be amplified, where instead of spikes, it's explosives, or he doesn't even summon the spikes, he just slams you down right away to get a pop-up, for instance. And as for something he needs, I think we're pretty much good there. If we're looking for something that could help extend combos, I think what would be cool would be some kind of alternate version of Ermac's Soul Lift. Like maybe a Soul Freeze, where he paralyzes the soul and thus freezes the opponent in place. Next is Shao Kahn. And Shao Kahn is an interesting character because he's always been kind of straightforward. Just hammers and grabs and being a big brute. But Shao Kahn is supposed to be quite clever, too. So I think it would be cool if we saw more of his commanding presence in battle. What if he got an ability that lets him summon minions to attack? Now, that's not generally a very Shao Kahn thing to do, to hide behind minions, but because he is a general and a warlord, it makes sense for him to summon a soldier to help him out. And I think it would be especially cool if we got different kinds of summons. Imagine, for instance, that Shao Kahn gets a... imagine, for instance, that Shao Kahn normally summons a Tarkatan who attacks the opponent and then runs off. But if Shao Kahn amplifies it, he can summon Motaro to trample the opponent instead. That way we get to see Motaro in his centaur form, and we get to see Shao Kahn be a leader. As for old moves that Shao Kahn has, that he hasn't had before, I think it would be interesting if Shao Kahn got his rising tackle again. He has his shoulder tackle, but his rising tackle is not something that he's had in a while. So giving him the rising tackle would help him potentially continue combos, and it would just be a fun special attack. Alternately, it could make for a nice replacement to his up 2, where he just uses his hammer. But alternate wake-ups aren't really a thing in this game. And finally, what does he need? Shao Kahn needs to be safer. And I think instead of altering frame data, why not give him an ability that grants him armor? Now, if you've ever played against Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 9, you know that the guy has armor on everything. So if Shao Kahn got armor but couldn't jump and maybe sacrificed one of each bar in order to activate it, kind of like the Terminator, he would be able to armor up, and he would be able to make himself safe because nobody's going to be able to punish him unless they go for an armor break, which some armor breaks are so slow that he could just block and then punish anyway. You know, activate boss mode, so to speak. The guy needs buffs because Kotal's got all the good buffs, so why not let Shao Kahn have some fun with buffs too, as he is a boss. Frost. Frost is interesting because she's a character that, in general, we've never seen her like this before. We've never seen her go full-blown cyberpunk. So, all of the attacks that she can do are brand new, because the last time she showed up was Mortal Kombat Armageddon. And before that, it was Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. So as for something new, well, the sky's the limit with her. And one thing I think would be kind of interesting would be a flight move. Now, it is known that Frost is capable of flight. She flies in her wake-up, she flies in her wake-up. I don't think you can see it in Snow Thrower, but she does have jets in her system. So imagine if she gained a omnidirectional, some sort of flight or air dash ability that you could, actually, another example, you can see it in her ability Air Icequake. And if this can be canceled into Air Icequake, all the better. But I can imagine her flying around, using it as mobility, and potentially doing jump attacks out of it. Maybe something like Mystic Ermac. As for something old, well, that could be literally anything of her arsenal. We could give her her ice daggers back as a stance where she uses her daggers. She had those in Mortal Kombat Armageddon and I believe Deadly Alliance. We could give her her slide. We could give her low freeze. We have options. And I think what would be really neat would be if, for Deadly Alliance Frost, or if we took something out of Deadly Alliance Frost and gave her those daggers again. Because that's just about all that she's missing. Like, all of her weapons that she makes are bigger weapons, like swords and scythes and things. Something smaller and more close up would be a very nice thing to see, especially if we want to pull something old from Deadly Alliance. And finally, something she needs. This I'm not all that well versed in, because Frost is not a character I've messed around with too much. But if I had to say anything, as far as an ability that she might, quote, need, why not give her a buff to all of her ice attacks? Why not give her a way to buff the damage in her ice attacks and make them do more damage? That way, she has more damage to work with, because I don't think her damage is necessarily bad, but it's never a bad thing to get a damage buff, right? Then we have Nightwolf. Something new for Nightwolf, I think, would be summoning the beasts to attack, not just Hana. Como and Kiba could also be summoned to attack, and then you would have an interesting beast attack variation instead of a beast buff variation if you went with all the beast buffs. I think that would be really cool to see, and Nightwolf's never really had anything like that. As for something old, Nightwolf summons a lot of his weapons, but we never really see him use... but a lot of his weapons and a lot of the things make it, but what's missing is a choke. Nightwolf had a choke in MK9 that could end combos for big damage. It's kind of like a command grab of sorts, but it wasn't really a command grab like the Tomahawk Swing. So, giving him that sort of extra ender that maybe he can amplify to switch places would help make it stand out against the mighty Tomahawk Swing. And as for something he needs, I don't think he needs anything, right off the top of my head. Nightwolf literally just has all of the things that he could ever possibly need. He has... Hang on a second, I gotta sneeze. Ouch! Do I have another one? No, I don't think so. Like, the only real weakness Nightwolf has is below average damage, which is fine because Nightwolf can tag you from just about anywhere. He's safe up close, he has great range, he can shut down zoning, he has a command grab in variation 2. So, it would be hard to say what Nightwolf really, quote-unquote, needs. But, if we have to give him a third brand new ability, why not give him something, or why not give him more shamanistic influences? Why not give him the ability to cleanse debuffs on himself? Every single character in Mortal Kombat 11 can suffer from debuffs, and quite a few characters can inflict various debuffs. Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung, for instance, are capable of reducing the opponent's damage output and making the opponents take more damage. Scorpion has DOT on his forward throw. Spawn can also inflict Can Spawn inflict DOT? I think I'm getting that confused with somebody else. DOT is a very common problem that you have to deal with because a lot of crushing blows do that. Getting poisoned is another issue, or perhaps any of these sorts of things where the opponent becomes hampered. If Nightwolf was capable of using a cleansing move that cleansed all debuffs, that would influence his shamanistic influences really nicely, and basically be about the only thing he doesn't have. Next up is Spawn. Now, Spawn is interesting because as a guest character, we could literally pull influence from his years and years as a comic book character. And there's a lot of shit you can pull from with Spawn. And they've already pulled a lot. A lot of cape attacks, a lot of chain attacks, summoning guns, summoning weapons, that kind of thing. But you also have things like Angel Spawn and God Spawn, Medieval Spawn, the Spawn Gunslinger. You have a lot of options to choose from as far as what you can do. Now, as the King of Hell, we can give Spawn, like Shao Kahn, the ability to summon demonic minions. He already kind of does this with his sweep, but imagine if he could summon demons to trap you. Kind of like Inferno Scorpion, in a sense, back in MKX, where he was able to summon a demon to help him out. I think that would be pretty cool. And then, another thing that we could see is, maybe we could see another one of these really big buffs. Because, right now Spawn has some interesting buffs. He has Invoking the Legion, which unlocks Fatal Blow early, and Soul Forfeit, which costs offensive meter in order to give him free crushing blows. Now, what if he got another buff that, let's say we call it the Armor of Malbolgia, something like that. He would sacrifice a defensive bar of meter, and in exchange, he could never suffer from a crushing blow for the rest of the round. Basically the inverse of Soul Forfeit. That would be really cool, and one hell of a way to just say, hey, guess what, guy? No more crushing blows for you. Also, we could give him buffs that affect his cape and his guns and things. There's really a lot you could do with Spawn, but if I had to pick three things, I would pick Inferno Scorpion style attacks, a reverse Soul Legion, and I would also give him... And I think I would also give him some sort of command grab that is just raw damage. In this custom variation, we have Hell Chain, which is, I think this is just basically variation 3, isn't it? Yes, it is. So this is modeled off of variation 3. And we have the Hell Chain, yeah, and it is technically a throw, sure. But what if he had a right proper command grab that its sole purpose was big damage? And maybe we can even give it a unique mechanic where it does more damage the more meter the opponent has. Call it Hell's Punishment or something. I think that'd be pretty cool. Jax! Jaximum, Maximum, Saximum Briggs. For something new, I'm not entirely sure what we would give him that is new. Jax already has quite a new kit with the buckshot and everything. But I think what would be cool is if we gave him an ability that lets him throw the grenades at the opponent. Because we know Jax is a very strong boy with big, mighty, meaty metal hands. So why not have him throw a grenade in order to make it serve as a faster projectile? This would conflict with both Buckshot and Thumper, but it would be kind of cool just to see him throw grenades in order to do damage. It kind of harken back to Striker in a way. As for something old, I would like to see the heat rockets be replaced with energy wave. That way you can keep bonking the opponent and save your heat for crushing blows and such, and then you would use energy wave as your projectile, which they might be slower and they would cost meter to amplify, so they would be worse in a couple of ways, but the fact that you could use them at any time helps Jax with his zoning and dealing with zoners. Especially if maybe the amplify is a big energy wave that knocks down, allowing Jax to get in. As for something he needs, Jax is in a pretty good situation already. The only thing I can really think of that he might, quote, need is a parry. Something to keep things different. Jax is a badass, we know this. But I think it would be really cool if Jax got his own melee parry, where he parries the opponent, bops the opponent, and knocks them down. And this could even be amplified to add more hits and then pop up the opponent potentially. It's just a hypothetical concept where Jax gets a parry. Not the kind of character that usually does get parries, but hey, why not? Cassie. Cassie's only ever been in Mortal Kombat X, and already there's stuff that we could probably take from that is old, but we're not going to get there just yet. As for what is new that Cassie could have, I think we should have a drone rush attack. That's about the only thing that the drone doesn't do right now. And right now the drone can create bubbles and reflect projectiles sent its way by Cassie in order to create energy bombs and help Cassie move around, and even be controlled by Cassie in order to do bombing raids and such. About the only thing that this little guy can't do is fly right at opponents outside of throws. Let's make that a special move where the drone just rushes at the opponent mid or low and knocks them down. That would be pretty sweet. And as for something old, right off the top of my head, there's her command grab. She had a command grab in MKX where she broke your arm and knocked you down, and it did pretty good damage. Now, if this restood, that would really be nice for Cassie. And that's about the first thing that really comes to mind. The other thing that comes to mind is her getting her nightstick in some combo strings, which is not impossible, but I don't know. I don't know if anybody wants to see that nightstick again. So I'm saying either her nightstick or her command grab in Brawler in MKX, the one where she grabs you and breaks your arm. And then that can also be implemented in some of her strings too. As for something she needs, I don't think she needs anything. Cassie's already a very strong character. She doesn't need anything. But if we want to talk about something that would be really cool, we get hyped up about the cage armor a lot, but we never really see it in action. So maybe we could get something with that where she buffs herself up with cage energy to do more damage. And while it is technically armor, in her case it lets her dish out more pain while it's active. It can even drain meter over time. So you activate it and it begins to drain meter, and in exchange she's doing 50% more melee damage. All of her guns, and except for the charged energy shot and the drone attacks, they don't get buffed, but everything involving her fists, yeah, that's gonna hurt more. Sonya Bobonia. I have more things on. I have more old things that she can have back than I have fingers on my hand. Seriously, on each hand. But if we're gonna talk about giving her something new, which is a possibility, even though she basically got a brand new moveset of her own already, why not reinforce the general aspect? And again, I am talking about summons and kind of puppet fighting, but she's a general. Let her call in more than just a tiny drone to help her out. Let her call for supporting fire from a special forces soldier. Let her call for a mortar strike. Let her have a special forces satellite wallop you from space. She's a general. She should be calling the shots, and it should be showing up in her abilities, just like Shao Kahn. As for something old, you know what I'm talking about. There's so many things that they could have given her back. Cartwheel, arc kick, military stance, leg grab, kiss dust, Cali sticks. See, I told you I'd get more than 5. Like in her 3D era games. There is so much that they could give her that is old that I'm not even entirely sure where to start. But I think where I should start is with the most iconic move that Sonya has. Why does she not have her leg grab? It's very odd, but but you might say, well, she does have her leg grab. Yeah, and it doesn't look like the classic leg grab. I'll say what I will about the classics and harp on them all the time, but there's a reason why they're classics, and even though I don't like the classic skins that much, I get why people do. And I think it would be neat to see Sonya get her classic leg grab back, because that's what she's most known for. And it could even replace her new leg grab, and even have a crushing blower to counter her punish if she breaks somebody's neck with it. That would be kind of fun. As for what she needs, again, Sonya's a pretty complete package as far as kit goes, but if I can think of anything that she would need right off the top of my head, I would say let's give her a stun. Let's give her a grounded stun so that she can have even more combo potential. She's already got crazy combos, but again, if what Mortal Kombat 11 needs to draw players back is more combos, then let's give it to some characters, so shall we? Gonna quickly cut here and then move on to the next character. Oh, I'm super snipply today for some reason. Okay, Johnny Cage. This guy. Oh, does he ever need some help? First things first. The first thing I would do is to give him something new, as our rules. But what to give him that's new, I'm not actually entirely sure. Because there actually isn't a whole lot you can work with Johnny Cage. He's got green powers and he is a movie star. So why don't we play off of the comedy aspect a little bit? Sorry, super nasally, but phlegmy, I should say. But well, let's see. First is we have a stunt double, we have a camera. Why don't we implement something else from the movie, or from the movie sphere, and do a camera modification system? And what that would do is he would go showtime and the walls would begin to close in, forcing opponents to come closer. The ultimate anti-zoning tool. For a short while, the walls come in and Johnny Cage and the opponent are twice as close as they're supposed to be. It'll eventually zoom out, and then you would have yourself back to the original maximum size of space. But manipulating the camera like this gives Johnny Cage some fourth wall humor and the ability to buff, to basically give him ultimate rushdown. Because you can't run if you're trapped in with Johnny Cage, you know? We can even call it Cage Shot or something like that, because they're caged in with you. Something like that. As for something old, I think Johnny Cage has most of his old moves, but I can think of something from Mortal Kombat X that he does not have, and that is Red Shadow. if he gets below a certain amount of health, let's say 30% in this game, instead of 5%, his shadow attacks would gain a 50% boost and they would be red. So he's desperate. He's using red shadow to do more damage. And that would help him, in a tight situation, get more damage out of his shadow attacks and thus hurt a lot. As for what he needs, Johnny needs some help. Johnny needs help now, because the guy got hit with such a ridiculous nerf. Yes, yes, his pressure is easier to deal with, but the guy had hurt box issues out the wazoo in the first place, so it wasn't perfect. And now that they reduced his plus frames and gave him a really crappy armor break, what is he gonna do? Well, I'll tell you one thing that he could do. Cage energy buff. Yes, I did just say this with Cassie Cage, but instead of Cage Energy buffing his damage, the Cage Energy would give him armor, giving him the ability to rush in and take less damage and be able to enforce pressure. Just like Shao Kahn, just like the Terminator, it would help him enforce his pressure without having to worry about getting clobbered for doing what he's supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? So, and it could even cost one defensive bar to activate, and it would have a cooldown period. Joker. I'm not entirely sure what I'm gonna do with the Joker, because there's a lot you could do with the guy. And if I had to start, it would be with... We have the right amount of wacky and a little bit of dark, so why don't we bring him back a little bit? Why don't we give him a Joy Buzzer parry? An alternate version of the parry that maybe it conflicts with the puppet parry. Well, it also conflicts with getting lit already, but let's say it also conflicts with puppet parry. He gets a Joy Buzzer parry. I know this is technically an old move because of Injustice 2, but in this case I think we should start with the old move because I'm not quite sure where to start with the new one. With Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, he had the Joy Buzzer parry, and then the Joy Buzzer parry became an alternate parry, or was it? No, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was also in Injustice 2, either as an ability or base move. So if he gets the Joy Buzzer parry that can restand opponents, that would be pretty sweet. And then he could amplify for more shakalaka damage and then they fall down. That sort of thing. As for something brand spanking new, Joker is not a new character. The guy's been around since 1940. He's been around for over 80 years. So his toy box is pretty deep. So why don't we give him something? That he's kind of always been associated with, but we've not seen him actually use in a fight. The Bang. The last time we saw this was Injustice 2. Sure, but if we let it be a buff first, so it maybe makes his projectiles go faster, or he goes a little faster, or what have you. Then you amplify this, and it would become a new attack that would cause the flag to fly at the opponent. That would be something pretty cool. And then Joker doesn't really need anything, but an alternate thing that would be super cool to see that would be new would be something we literally have never seen in Mortal Kombat until the Jinsei buffs came in. And that's Joker Gas. Joker Gas is part of the Jinsei augments for the Joker's Jack in the Box. When Jack in the Box attacks get amplified, they leave a cloud of venom, Joker Venom instead. If the opponent stands in the Venom for long enough, they get locked into a stun state where they kind of just laugh and dance around creepily. But what if that was actually part of a move? What if Joker, let's say, buffs his club, and then the next Bird Boy beatdown that he lands will infect the opponent with the Joker toxin, and after a short period of time, they will be caught in an unblockable stun by the Joker venom, allowing Joker to combo. Does he need it? No. But it's something that he has always been associated with for the longest time, and yet we've never seen him use in combat. Not yet, anyway. Scorpion. I could talk about Scorpion needing the fire variation all day, but you don't need me to hear that. What you want to hear is, what can we give him that's new, old, and needed? Well, first off, if we want to give him something new, we need to look at his current arsenal, which is to say his swords and his rope spear. What I think would be neat is to turn Scorpion into a Rekka character. If you don't know what a Rekka is, it's part of, I think it's called Rekka Matsu. I'll put the correct spelling in the video, wherein you provide an input, do an input multiple times, and then you kind of expand the combo in different ways. This was named, it was called the Rekka because of the full move's name from Street Fighter II. Fei Long had this, where he would advancing punch, and then if you did the input again, you get a second punch, and then a third time finishes it with a third punch. Rekkas are not that common in modern fighting games, and the last time a NetherRealm game had one, to my knowledge, is Mortal Kombat X with Tanya and her Tonfas. So if Scorpion got that with his swords, looking hypothetically like Hellfire Kata, just as an example of what the attack would look like. Input, 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 that kind of thing. Then it would be pretty cool to see, because then you could have more sword play. And Scorpion does have a lot of sword play already, but having it be part of a special move would be awesome. And I don't think we have seen that, per se. Scorpion having a Rekka. As for something old, I would like to see an alternate version of Burning Spear. His flame aura, basically. This, or either his flame aura or his ground fire. Or his leg takedown. He has quite a few attacks that are classic that he does not have in this game. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to go with my favorite of the options, which is Flame Aura. It's most similar to Burning Spear, sure. But Burning Spear is a buff that just affects the spear. Flame Aura lets it do damage over time just by standing next to you. It's like Scarlet's Aura, but fire-based. And maybe it turns all of his attacks fire-type for those of you who play in the towers. This would help Scorpion stay on the defensive, because he doesn't need to reach out to hurt you. He can keep his defense on point and still do damage over time by you being close to him. The other alternate options with ground fire would make for a really good reset, for sure, and Scorpion's leg takedown is pretty iconic, but it's not necessarily needed. Which brings me to, what does Scorpion actually need? As far as his base kit, adding a new move is not going to benefit him too much, because he already has a lot of moves that covers a lot of different things. He has a pseudo projectile and spear, he has his teleport, he has decent attacks and combo strings, he has launchers. He has just about everything a character could ever need. But what I think would be fun would be, let's give him something that let's give Scorpion something that Scorpion has never had before. Never had before or since. A command grab. Yes, let's give Scorpion a command grab, because that's basically the only major tool that Scorpion is missing. Nightwolf, who is another generalist, has a command grab, so why not let Scorpion have one? And it would be a standard command grab fare. Maybe it doesn't do too much damage as far as a command grab, because that's not the style of character Scorpion is. But giving him a command grab would, especially one that could tick, would allow for Scorpion to keep up pressure in ways that he's never been able to do before, and keep things, let's say, rather interesting. Next up, we have the Edge of Darkness. Noob Saibot. Come on. Noob Saibot is very traditional in and of himself. he already has his Disabler. He already has his Teleport Grab. He has a lot of clone attacks. So what could we give him that's new? What can we give him that he's never really had before? Well, I think we don't have to look too far. See this sickle? It's a new weapon, and it's very cool. But for a Master of Darkness, wouldn't it make sense for him to buff it to allow darkness to kick in and allow the darkness to do what darkness does in the towers? Now, I'm not suggesting we throw in elemental combat, because elemental combat is just one element that we don't have to worry about. Pun not intended. But you can look at the non-competitive element to see what you could throw into the competitive scene. And I think if we give the darkness buff the ability to increase chip damage for any hook attack that lands, let's say doubles or even triples it, then that would take something that is directly found in the game already, where there's a darkness augment that increases the amount of darkness damage that you do on block. Here's an example. Oppressive attacks deal a certain amount more damage when blocked. It requires an oppressive effect. So obviously I'm not advocating for a ludicrous chip increase. Just enough to make all hook attacks terrifying. Back 3 grab, back 1 grab, back 3 grab, the sickle slam, those kind of things. And then you can amplify it so that it does more damage without having to worry about chip. And then there's something old. And again, it's really hard to find something that Noob Saibot does that has not been used already. He already has teleports, he already has the shadow clone attacks, and he already has both Spirit Ball and Ghost Ball, aka the Disabler. So we're gonna have to play it a little bit safe. Let's have an alternate version of the Ghost Ball, one that is also unblockable, but instead of damaging the opponent's gauge, it reverses their controls. Because that's what the Disabler used to do. It used to scramble controls. It also used to disable blocking, but I feel like if I say we should give Noob Saibot an attack that disables blocking, that would be a terrible idea. So let's have it scramble controls, which on the surface it doesn't sound like it's much better. But if we concern it with just the face buttons, so it scrambles the attack buttons and it doesn't scramble movement options or grab or interactables, then you could at least make an effort, right? You could still stay on the defensive and you could still at least try for something. And it would give something old that Noob Saibot has that would be new to MK11. As for what he needs, I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, but I think if he were to quote need anything, it's better overhead shenanigans, because he needs mix. He needs some sort of option that is overhead that can force opponents to stand block. That way, one can have access to his back 3 grab crushing blow, which is one of his best if it weren't for the stand blocking requirement and Noob Saibot's inability to scare opponents into stand blocking. The only time you ever stand block against Noob Saibot is if they go for 1-1-2, because that is his only overhead. And if his feet ever leave the ground, but that's because of jumping attacks. So I propose, and yeah, you could also make the case, well, what about the aerial sickle attack? Where did it go? Sickle toss. You could argue, what about sickle toss? Well, if you're close enough to the opponent, to Noob Saibot, the sickle toss really doesn't matter. You have to be a fair distance away from Noob Saibot for even the close version to hit you. So a point-blank overhead attack is what he would need in order to round out his toolkit. And I think if we did that in the form of a new special move that I'm gonna call Headache, where he takes the hook and slams it into your head and then forces you down into the ground, if that's a true overhead, then you can scare people into stand blocking, especially if it's really good on block. So the opponent is scared into stand blocking, then you could go for back 1 or back 3 and get that crushing blow for really good damage. And that would freshen up noob sidebot combos a lot because we'd actually be seeing that crushing blow online and in tournament. Baraka. I can't really think of too much for Baraka. For something new, I think since Baraka's supposed to be the leader of the Tarkatans now, wouldn't it not be cool to see him summon aid from the Tarkatans? Maybe he gets a weapon thrown his way by a Tarkatan and then he uses it. I'm not saying Baraka should get a shotgun entirely. As funny as that would be, considering that in MK9 the Tarkatans did get firearms, but suppose that, you know, he gets aid. A Tarkatan archer pins the opponent down, or a trapper sets up a trap for Baraka. You know, he's telling Tarkatans what to do. It shows that he's a leader. That would be pretty sweet. As for something old, about all I can think of of Baraka's that is old that he doesn't really have, outside of a few normals here or there, is the blade spin, which would be really good against catching teleporters and ending combos. And hell, the Baraka alien got the blade spin, so why shouldn't Baraka? I should also very quickly note that for the Tarkatan summoning idea, I was also partially inspired by MK Mobile, where Baraka could actually summon other Tarkatans as part of his special too, but that's where part of that inspiration comes from. As for what he needs, he's pretty solid, but he's fallen from grace a little bit just because he's a little bit less safe on things. And I think one way to make him more terrifying on block is to give you a reason not to block. Or at the very least, risk your neck for blocking. So what if we gave him a buff to his blades that allow all blade attacks to do increased chip damage? And yes, that does include Chop Chop. So be careful, because Chop Chop would be doing a lot of chip damage. But it would be like Noob Saibot. You don't want it to be too high. That's about all I can think of. Maybe it's even, instead of it being a move, maybe it's just a passive thing that's added when the flag's out. But that's neither here nor there. Raiden! Oh, good lord, Raiden. Where do I start with this guy? Well, first off, having teleports back universal would be sweet, but since they're not going to do that, let's take a look at something new they could give him instead. And it's something that appears in the Mortal Kombat 11 story mode that isn't in gameplay elements. It's also in his second fatality. Yes, I'm talking about those lightning swords. Since, like, March of 2019. March? No, since March of this year at least. I've been wanting Raiden to have those electric swords that he uses in the story mode that we never see again. Why is he not allowed to use those really sweet lightning swords? Let him get a buff kind of like Quick Charge, where instead of buffing his ability to take chip and then get a reversal, he gets more damage off of his punching attacks. And if he lands 3 punching hits, they will stun the opponent for combos. Why not? As for something old, about the only thing I can think of right away for Raiden is some of his more goofier attacks, like Reverse Lightning. That's about the only thing I can think of. He used to be able to throw his lightning backwards and hit the opponent in the back, which wouldn't really help in a game that has a block button. But if the opponent is at range, you could use it to catch opponents at range faster than you can with the normal straight lightning. And it can even replace normal straight lightning and just have backwards lightning that he could then amplify and throw a bolt forward. As for what he needs, Raiden just needs some love in general, man. I mean, Raijin helps Raiden a lot because it gives him a really fast reversal, but I think what Raiden needs the most is better mobility. He needs ways to get in a little better because weirdly they want to paint him as a jack of all trades, but for some reason he's not good at anything. His zoning is mediocre, and while he does decent damage if he hits you, he has a hard time hitting you. So maybe he could also gain a buff that increases his movement speed and
maybe even some of his attack speed. Not by much, but just enough that he moves quick as lightning, so to speak, and allows him a way in to buff himself to be scary. Next up is Jackie Briggs. First off, I'm just going to say this. Jackie doesn't need anything. If anything, she might need a nerf. And, this was something I was supposed to test. We're going to test this really quick while I talk about Jackie. I want to check and see what happens if in my first video on the subject, I talked about giving Jackie the prototype rocket because she doesn't have it in anything. So, if Jackie had the rockets, would combined with Bionic Jump, I feel like she wouldn't be able to do the insane jump pressure anymore. But at the same time, she would gain a zoning tool. So she loses pressure up front and gains a little bit in the back. So let's say... Oh, wow, it remembered my settings. Weird. So... yeah, that would be an example of what I'm talking about. Do I have Enhanced Blast? Do I have Enhanced Blast in this variation? I don't remember. I think I should have it, but the idea would be you launch the rocket, it knocks down, and then maybe she could get something off of it, maybe she can't, but it knocks the opponent down. Let's see, prototype rocket, dive bomb is what she has. She doesn't have the Enhanced Blast, but that would be an example of what I'm talking about. And I think what she should have that is new is, let's give her, because she's, why don't we give her, because we have to give her something new, let's give her a wall jump. Now, that sounds weird because traditionally NetherRealm doesn't do wall jumps. The last time they did one was Cheetah in Injustice 2. But with Jackie's autonetic legs, well, exo legs and whatnot, she should have crazy mobility. It could even conflict with Bionic Bounce, so you can't have them on the same variation. But she could have her back on the wall, jump off the wall, and then attack that way. But because of the arc starting from as high as it is on the wall, she might not be able to travel as far as the Bionic Bounce. That way she can't do anything ridiculous with the air blasts or anything like that. As for something old that Jackie has, I feel like she should get her, I'm going to call it her auto combo back. Back forward 4 in MKX. The idea is that she slugs you and then does an auto combo and knocks you down. That was always very cool and always acted as a very nice ender. And it can even conflict with the clinch. It might do nice damage on its own, but you can't have it with the clinch in order to just keep things quasi-fair. And finally, like I said, Jackie doesn't need anything. If anything, she needs a nerf. But if we have to give her something that she would, quote, need, well, would it not be fun to give her a wall that stops projectiles so she can advance in? That's about all I can say. And even then, I feel weird giving Jackie something that she, quote, needs when she doesn't need anything. Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero is, again, being a longtime character, he has a lot of his moves already in his system. And in fact, he really only has the 2 classics, Slide and Ice Ball. Everything else they give him is just icing on the cake. Pardon the pun. And that means if we want to give him something new, we have to think about ways that his ice has not been used before. So what has he used his ice for in previous games? Low freeze, ice clones that double as ice walls, aerial ice projectiles, little icicles, spikes, and big ice walls. So you might be thinking, well, what are we going to do about ice now? Because we've done a lot of things with ice. Well, why don't we take a look over at what some of his compatriots in Injustice have done? Because Killer Frost and Captain Cold could give him inspiration for new attacks. For instance, we could have the Flash Freeze parry that Killer Frost had, that resets the neutral and gives Sub-Zero the ability to keep himself safe, especially if it was one of the faster parries in the game. Or we could give him a charge buff like Captain Cold that increases overall ice damage and maybe even gives his physical attacks a chance to freeze. Of these, I'm actually leaning towards the ice parry just because Sub-Zero has had parries before, but never in human form to my immediate knowledge. The closest would be his clone. Wait, no, he had his ice shield. Never mind. He does have his ice shield, but that's considered old. So that just leaves the Arctic buff thing, where he would potentially buff the damage he does, the chip damage, and give his melee attacks a chance to freeze. Going back to what is old then, let's give him the aforementioned MKX parry with the shield that stops projectiles and also freezes opponents in place, allowing him to turn an oppressive situation into a full combo. And as for what he needs, I don't know if he needs anything. Variation 2 covers his zoning problem really well. I styled it in Canadian. Arctic Trap helps him with trap situations and setups. And Variation 1 is just an okay variation. There's combos to be had and it stops projectiles, but it acts more as rush down than anything. So if I had to think of anything that Sub-Zero might need, I'd like a little more of his defensive property back. So let's look again back to MKX and let's give him his ice armor buff, but make it so that he takes less damage right off the cuff without needing meter. The amount of damage reduction he takes can be dependent on meter, but if we give him that, then we can have a more defensive Sub-Zero again, which I think would be nice to see. Jade. If this was Mortal Kombat 9, I could tell you a whole bunch of things that she needs, because, like it or not, Jade was bottom 3 alongside Shiva and Kano in Mortal Kombat 9. In this game, she is definitely not bottom tier. So, what could we give her? First off, let's think of something new. I think the first thing that we should give her that would be really cool and new would be a staff Rekka. She has staff strings and staff attacks and everything, but like Scorpion, I don't think ever had a Rekka. So why not give her a Rekka-based attack? For something that she would, quote, need, I have an idea for that, but we'll save it for that section. As for something old that she would be missing, I find it weird that she doesn't have her staff grab, where she impales you and slams you into the ground. I think it would be cool if she got that move back, because that is one of her classics, and the fact that it's not here on Jade is particularly strange when the last person to have that move was, if you don't count Injustice, Kitana. So that would be really cool to see. And then for the thing that she might need, we all know dodging shadows is great for stopping projectiles, but it does nothing to physical attacks. But her name is Jade. Why don't we focus a little bit of magic and give her some influence from Emma Frost and Tremor? Let's give her a Jade form. Let's have her turn into a literal Jade woman and have armor while it's active. Maybe she can't jump because the Jade is heavy. Makes sense. But at least she could armor through things. And maybe it's not even traditional armor. Maybe it can be armor pierce, but it's not traditional armor. She would take a reaction, but it would be like block damage. It would be like the frame data would change to where it would be like if she flawless blocked an attack, turning attacks that would normally be safe into unsafe and allowing Jade to punish. And furthermore, if she amplifies it, maybe she takes a damage reduction too. Next, we have Kung Lao. As for something that new that Kung Lao could do, well, they kind of went crazy in Mortal Kombat 11 already. We have new hat gimmicks, summoning the Great Kung Lao, a new spin type, that kind of thing. But I think for something new for Kung Lao, he used to be called Bird Lao in MK9 because of how often he would jump and dive kick. He would just jump around and wait for his chance to do dive kick because it was so good in MK9. So why not enhance his aerial movement even further and give him the ability to float? instead replacing his teleport, what if he could float? Yeah, float forward, float backwards, float in place, doesn't matter. We give him the ability to float, and shit hits the fan, I think, in a good way. Now, you might also be thinking, well, wait. Didn't he have a float in MK3? He didn't. What he actually had was, in UMK3, he actually had Raiden's electric fly. So Kung Lao could fly in MK3, but they never did anything with it. So the float was partially inspired by that, but it would replace his teleport if it was new. As for something old, well, admittedly, the idea of giving Kung Lao an alternate version of the electric fly would be hilarious, but I don't think he needs that. I think what would be much more neat instead would be if he got the ability to control which way he would spin on Amplify. It would be a modification. It would be like MK3 Lao and MKX Tempest Lao, where he became able to change which way he was spinning. But if it was done on Amplify, you could catch rollers. So you would spin, people would roll past you, you spin backwards, and you catch them and continue combos that way. Alternately, you could also use it to catch teleporters. And finally, as for something he needs, I don't know if he needs anything. The closest thing I could think of is maybe faster recovery off of hat toss. So maybe it's a buff that he gets where where his hat flies faster and it recovers quicker. But that's about all I can think of that Kung Lao would need. Kitana doesn't need any more abilities. She already has an excessive amount. She has the lion's share of the ability count. But if we have to give her something new that she's never had before, I think a really good place to start would be considering her wind abilities. Now, she summons a tornado and she can now float with her fans. But what if we took it a step further? What if we took the float idea a step further and allowed Kitana to fly? Now, that sounds really strange. Just picturing Kitana fluttering around and flying around that way. But she already does it in one of her taunts. She flutters, she sits in a tornado, and then she comes down. So why not give her the ability to do that and have fluttering be multi-jumps? She jumps, flutter, 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 and maybe after 2 flutters, the next flutter requires meter. That way, she can advance on the opponent just by staying in the air, which is a risky prospect because an anti-air would really hurt her. Because getting hit by attacks at anti-air would suck. But what can you do? As for something old, I would genuinely, first thing that came to my mind is to give her teleport back, because Kitana did at one point have a teleport in the 3D era games, I believe, but they're gone now. So let's give her teleport back so that she can have some enhanced mobility. And finally, what does she need? What is Kitana known for? Crazy combos. And in this game, her combos are Her fans can combo in the corner, but they don't combo mid-screen, and that's been the point of them for a long time. So what if there's a new Amplify for her fans that is an old Amplify in the sense that she throws a fan that sticks the opponent in the air for long enough for Kitana to get in and combo? That would exactly be what she would need in order to really propel her back to where she was. Liu Kang is another one of those characters that doesn't really need anything because his kit is just so complete. But we can give him a few ideas for new things to play with. For instance, Liu Kang is all about dragons, right? Well, what if he has an attack where he turns into the Mortal Kombat dragon and flies forward? And maybe ensnares the opponent in a fire spin that knocks them down. That would be pretty sweet, I think. And then you could even amplify it where Liu Kang jumps out of the dragon and the dragon is still spinning, trapping the opponent and extending combos. I think that would look pretty sweet. As for something old that he has that he doesn't have anymore, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is something from Flame Fist, like the bicycle punches instead of the bicycle kicks, but that seems a little bit silly for Liu Kang. So too with giving him the Flame Fists when he already has the Dragon's Gift, which lets all of his attacks be buffed. Dragon Fire, that's what it is. But then it came to me. Light and Dark. Remember when he had this whole light and dark gimmick in one variation in Mortal Kombat X? Why not bring that back? It would be kind of cool to see him throw dark fireballs that have crazy chip damage, and then light fireballs that heal him if they land on an opponent, or something like that. For the old things that we could bring back. As for what he needs, aside from a better armor break, I can't really think of anything. Liu Kang is a pretty complete package. But what if we gave him specifically a nunchuck buff that makes all of his nunchuck attacks safer on block? I think that would be kind of fun, but that's about all I could think of. Cabal. Another character that got a lot of love and revamping in MK11, so new stuff will be hard to come by. But the first thing that comes to my mind is stealing from the Flash. And I know the comparisons have been made since MK vs. DC. Kano makes these fucking comparisons in that game. But I think it would be neat to kind of steal something from the Flash. And put it in Cabal, in a sense. And I think what would be fun to steal would be if he got the ability to throw something. Now, that seems weird, but in Injustice 2, the Flash had the ability to collect lightning, and in I believe the Justice League Flashpoint movie, he collects and concentrates air molecules by vibrating them and then throws them in order to get free. So imagine if Cabal was able to do that. It would replace his buzzsaw, but it gives him a new, unique projectile he's never had before that emphasizes his speed, which he has a lot of it. And as for something old, well, there isn't really much else to say. There isn't really a whole lot else that we could give him that is old that he doesn't already have. He already has his hook slam. We already have low buzzsaw in an ability. We already have various hook grabs, a straight buzzsaw, that kind of thing. And even the amplify for the low saw is 2 buzzsaws, just like if you amplified it in MK9. But there is one thing we could do that Cabal used to have. Another projectile. The Gas Blast traditional projectile. Now, he does have the Gas Blast in this game right here. But it is a burst of gas. It makes sense. It now makes sense. But Nova Blast, I believe was the name of the amplify, was where he fires a purple blast from his mask. And it'd be kind of neat to see that come back in some way, shape, or form. Turn Cabal into a zoner again. As hilarious as that is. And as for something he needs, well, he's pretty well-rounded already and very safe. The only trouble is that he sometimes has trouble getting things started, but once he gets things started, he's hard to stop, right? So, if he had something that would help him get things moving, then I think that would be basically all he needs. As for what that could be, I couldn't exactly tell you. I couldn't exactly tell you off the top of my head. Maybe a fake out run where it looks like he's going to dash but he never runs, or a reverse run where he runs in from behind. Kind of like his Fatal Blow, but, you know, less unsafe. And then there's Kano. Oh, Kano. We'll make this quick because I don't like looking at this guy. For something new, I think we should give him...
Whoa, God!
I think we should give him a buff that lets him drink a beer. Guy drinks a beer a lot. So what would that buff do? I think it would be fun if it regens stamina. He just chugs a beer and throws it aside, and that regens some of his stamina in a chunk. But if he has a few too many, he gets woozy and his attacks become slower. You know, he drinks too much and now he gets sloppy. This would cool down over time so that he's sober again. But we already had a character that drinks a whole bunch, i.e. Baraicho, but I don't want the caveat of drinking too much to be him puking again. Leave the puke to Baraicho and let Kano just get stumbly and sloppy whenever he drinks too much beer. As for something old that he has that he lost, that he should have back, I think he should either get his grenades back from MKX, or he should get his command. Well, he does kind of have new command grabs, but let's enhance. I know what it is. Let's enhance his parry, because he had a high and low parry, but now he just has rack off. So let's give him a low parry like Sonya, and give him a new effect when he does those parries. As for what he needs, off the top of my head, he kind of just has. He's kind of an inferior Nightwolf, at least in Variation 1. His damage is less than his damage may be more, but he's less safe. So if we gave him some dirty tricks to make himself safer on block than he should be, that's about all I can think of. RoboCop is probably the character I know the least about, so it's mostly going to be new stuff. So, RoboCop, what does this guy have that's new that he doesn't have in his arsenal? Well, again, I know next to nothing about the movies. Well, I do know one thing that I would like to see in combat outside of certain cinematics. Not the assist from the cop, but that'd be nice too. I'm talking about Ed 209. This colossal jaguar-sounding SOB needs to be in somewhere. I don't know how fast he moves. I don't think he moves that particularly quickly. But imagine if Ed came in from behind RoboCop and just shot a rocket at the opponent for massive damage. Or stepped on the opponent. Or something along those lines. Get Ed to be summoned. I think that would be really nice and cool. Another alternate option would be to call for backup. I think that would be pretty fun. Like how he gets... Like how this cop calls for RoboCop, kinda. But that's about it. Those are the two options I would give. And then for what he needs... I feel like as much of an emphasis on keep away as RoboCop needs is, because that's basically all he does, I think it would be kind of cool if we got to see RoboCop do a little more up-close work. And I think a good way to do that would be to give him something that stuns on the ground that can be comboed into. Now, RoboCop already has a comboing stun ability in Upgraded, which... if the electricity explodes, it stuns for a combo, but you can't combo into it. So I think what would be neat would be to take some inspiration from the electric shield move and have RoboCop basically electrify his probe and stab the opponent in order to taser them. Or alternately, we could pull something from Stryker. And because Stryker in Mortal Kombat 9 used a flashlight to stun opponents in his X-Ray, why not hide some sort of crazy high beam thing on RoboCop that lets him, well, literally blind the opponent? It can only land once per combo opportunity, but it would still restand and combo and let RoboCop have some nice combos as well as his zoning. Because as much as playing keep away and zoning doesn't bother me, it bothers people. So let's give RoboCop a reason to come in close. Next we have my girl Scarlet. Now, a lot of people don't like I shouldn't say a lot, but some people don't like her new Blood Mage motif. They want her to be more ninja-like, and I say I disagree. The less ninja-like she is, the better, because not everything in Mortal Kombat has to be ninjas, guys. It just doesn't. Does it have to be as army focused as it is? No. But considering ninja characters, we have Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Noob Saibot, Kitana, and Jade. And pretty soon Mileena. That's enough ninjas. It's exactly the same reason why I actually don't like calling Rain a Mortal Kombat ninja anymore. Sure, he started as a ninja, but now he's a demigod. You want to demote him to ninja status just because he used to be a ninja? That doesn't make any sense. But enough ranting. So I want to give her something new, and I want to give her a blood curse of some kind. I want to give her something that what am I thinking? Right, the blood curse. I want to give Scarlet an ability to curse the opponent's blood somehow. And I think what would be neat would be if she got a command grab where she creates a blood weapon that stabs into the opponent and into herself, and then she pulls it out, damaging both of them initially. But what happens is that the opponent suffers from damage over time, and if Scarlet is close enough to the opponent who's suffering from damage over time, she heals. So she would heal off the damage from the wound at a similar rate to the opponent taking the damage. If at any point she makes contact with her blood weapons, or if she's just standing next to the opponent. And that would be, I think, something really cool. But if we want to take something from old appearances, she's literally only made an appearance in Mortal Kombat 9 and in the MKX comic. And she really just served in the MKX comic to fuel the blood code and get her legs taken out by Mileena. So let's focus on the game. So what can we take from the game? Well, the game made her a blood ninja, and that means she had a lot of ninja type attacks. A run, kunoichi mix-ups, throwing kunai, that kind of thing. Now, I don't want to take too much, if any, ninja inspiration, if I can. But that's about all that we can do, unless we give her the blood slide that she had in Mortal Kombat 9. Maybe she has to create the trail first and then slides. But the point is that she slides in using blood. That would be a good way for her to get in. As a character who is at both times a zoner and a rushdown character, she could benefit from a good way of getting in. And that would be something she takes from the old. And ultimately what she needs can't be given an ability. She needs her gaps to be plugged. She needs her gaps to be plugged in some way so that she isn't flawless blocked on literally everything she does. But she might also benefit from being able to be a little bit faster. So if we're willing to double down on the entries, I think some sort of mobility asset that is universal to her would be a really good thing for Scarlet. Next we have Aaron Black. And Aaron Black, he's another character that is quite interesting in that I don't know what to give him that's new, because besides some of his normals and some of his pistol stuff, they gave him all new special attacks. They gave him dynamite, they gave him bear traps, they gave him reptiles acid puddle, they gave him more rifle shenanigans. So what do you give him that is new that he hasn't had before? Well, why don't we play into the cowboy shtick a little bit? What does Aaron Black have, despite being a cowboy, what does Aaron Black not have, despite basically being a cowboy gunslinger archetype? He doesn't have a lasso. He doesn't have a rope that he can use to tie people up. Why not give it to him? Let's give him a Wonder Woman's lasso type attack where he lassos the opponent and pulls them in. I think that would be a pretty neat thing to see and just help cement that theme just that little bit more. As for what's old, there's quite a bit that I would like to give that's old. The first thing that comes to my mind is a replacement for the acid that isn't the dynamite. I want to give him his caltrops back. because, you know, that's iconic to the character. And it would help him by restricting his movement. The one thing is that he also has his sand grenades, which the magic sand grenades would be super cool, or the magic bullet. He has so much from his old kit that would be nice to see back that I'm not even entirely sure where we go. My personal thinking is that he should get caltrops, but if he got sand grenades, I'd be happy with that too. As for what he needs, well, he counters zoning pretty well, and he does pretty well up close. And he is very, very mixy, but he's unsafe in his mixes. So, the one thing that comes to my mind that he could quote-unquote need is a way to start or continue combos. Maybe he throws sand in the eye, or blinds them in some way. That's about all I can think of. Devora. Another character that kind of suffered from a shifting moveset, but not as much as the rest of the cast did. She has quite a bit of her attacks still, they just kind of got modified. The first thing I'd give her that would be new would be I would want to give her... I want to give her something that I feel like she always should have had, but they never really gave her. A way to stun opponents. Without sacrificing her baby. She does have the bug bomb and MKX, but she doesn't really have anything like that in this game. But what she does have are, these are called urticating breeders. Now, if you don't know what that is, what urticating means, it basically means the ability to irritate or cause extreme itching. You ever been bitten by a mosquito? You ever had a really bad mosquito bite? That is literally what I'm going to suggest. She stabs the opponent and causes them to itch so bad that they're left open for a combo. I think as a new gimmick, that would be cool. As for old gimmicks, the one thing that I want to see back from her old kit that she doesn't really have in this game is her old air throw. For some reason, they gave her the ability to fly and flexed her ability to fly, but they never gave her her air throw back. Why not let her have her air throw and allow it to be in her variation 3 where she flies around? Imagine how fun that would be. You see the opponent jumping, you fly in, cancel it into air throw. It'd be fun. As for what she needs an overhead way to deal with. She needs a way to deal with opponents that is relatively safe, because a lot of her attacks are unsafe or have weird hurt box issues, like her forward 2-2 down grab can miss crouching opponents. Why is it missing crouching opponents? I don't know. But it would definitely benefit her if she had a way to help deal with opponents that altered their hurt box. So a stun or just something that reliably hits low opponents would be nice. Then we have COTW. My boy, COTW. If we look to the Aztec myths, and what one of his main inspirations were... By the way, these hooks are temporary until I get the the new Kotal hooks. These ones, because look, they fit the theme with the sword. But the first thing that comes to my mind when it comes to Kotal is remembering how his hooks used to look in MKX and how they look here. Serpentine. Snakes were one of the main themes for Kotal that isn't really exploited in Mortal Kombat 11. The theme that they went with instead for his animal influence is the Jaguar, which is fine. His Jaguar transformation is awesome. But why don't we give him another one? Why don't we let him transform into Quetzalcoatl? Now, Quetzalcoatl is the feather serpent, is one of the feather serpents from South and Central America, who is worshipped by the Aztecs, god of the sky and of knowledge. But imagine if Kotal Khan could turn into the feathered serpent and attack with that form, or advance through the air in that form. That would be pretty sweet, in my personal opinion. Then we have what is old that he doesn't have. Kotal Khan is missing one move that he's had in his universal arsenal. The ability to cut himself to buff his damage. Now, I'm not sure why they removed this, but it's literally the only universal classic attack that he lost in the transition. And I would give that back to him. And I would even let it be stronger. For 5 hits, it does 50% damage instead of for 3. You know what I mean? As for what he needs, at launch, I would have told you Kotal needs to be safer. And he needs to have slightly faster buttons. But Kotal is fine now. So, the one thing I can tell you for sure that he needs is an Amplify to God Ray, where it follows Kotal. Basically, we're going to turn God Ray into the inverse of Tonatia Beam, which Tonatia Beam is always placed on Kotal and then follows the opponent if amplified. But God Ray has to be placed and then you amplify it to follow Kotal. I think that would make for a really cool thing and would really help Ascension out a lot. Kotal really does need that, in my opinion. And then there's Shiva. Shiva is another one of those interesting characters that has a fairly complete package. So, what could we give Shiva that is new? Well, just like Baraka and Shao Kahn and Sonya Blade, let's give her a Shokan assist. Let's have her call Goro or Kintaro or any... Let's actually have her calling Kintaro, because Kintaro needs some love. Let's have her calling Kintaro as an assist. Maybe he stomps on down and then runs off. Or he's a living mortar and just exhales a giant fireball at the opponent, or something along those lines. Having Kintaro as an assist to Queen Shiva would be pretty fun. As for what is old that she could have back... Alright, back to what I was saying about Shiva. Sorry, got distracted. There isn't a whole lot that you could give Shiva that isn't traditional. Like, all I can think of is, if we want to go old, we should give her some of her old strings. She has an old sweep, so she had to sweep and then she had another sweep with her hand that she could then pop the opponent up into the air in order to continue combos. Having something like that back, I think, would be pretty sweet, because, I mean, you can give characters new strings, especially if you consider that Kano has an ability that does exactly that. It gives him a different version of 2 of his strings. As for what she needs, I don't know. I think she's fine. The only thing that really hurts her is her stumpy range. And not necessarily needed to kind of enhance that, but what if we also helped her get to the damage status that she had in MK9? What I mean by that is that she used to do insane damage for a low tier character. Like, almost 50% in 1 bar. It's insane. It was about the only thing she was good at, actually. But if we let her... Let's say we let her fists get a fire buff. What if that allows her to do more damage with her fists and grabs? I think that would be pretty cool. At least in my playbook. Now we're on to the final 6. Sindelicious. You know what she needs? A complete character overhaul and being brought back to the real Sindel. I'm not kidding, by the way, but I can't do that in new moves. So let's take a look at new attacks that she has not had before. And I think one thing that we could give Sindel that she doesn't have, or that she never had, is a little bit of inspiration from another Screamer who once kicked her ass via Death Battle, Black Canary. And I think Black Canary was the one who beat Sindel. I'm pretty sure. Hopefully, I got that right. But let's take some inspiration from Black Canary. Now, what can that mean? Well, what if we changed how her scream worked in an ability? We give her a short-range scream that she can use all the time. And then if she charges up passively, let's say her meter begins to kind of glow faintly purple, it becomes her amplified scream for free. But the cost is that she can't but she can also amplify her scream up to level 2, theoretically, if she was at level 1 scream, so she still has that amplify. But then if you let it go all the way to level 3, the scream is so powerful, it knocks the opponent back, makes them hit the wall, and knocks them down, and gives Sindel the opportunity to combo for free a lot. Like, imagine if the opponent was stunned for 4 seconds as they fell to the ground because they got screamed at. I think that would be a really cool new thing that they could do to enhance her scream in a way that it hasn't been done before. And yes, that's stealing from Black Canary, but if I'm not gonna... But, look, if I'm going to take from one good Scream Mama, I'm gonna take from the best. As for something old, Standing Star Screamer. Why is it that her only projectile in her tournament variation is in one variation and is her low Screamer? Why doesn't she have the normal Screamer? I don't know, but she doesn't have it, and let's give it back to her. As for what she needs to be faster. And if she had a particularly fast special move or new enhancement to a string that can help with her combos, I think that would be pretty good. But if we're speaking on strings, let's give her a new addition to Standing 1 and Standing 2 that are a little bit faster and allow her to keep up pressure. That's about all I think she would need outside of a full and complete retcon. The Collector. Retcon back to how she was. With the Collector, he's a brand new character, so we don't even have... He's one of the 3 brand new characters, so we don't even have to touch the old part. So we're just going to do one new move and one thing that he needs. A brand new move, I think, would be a net. Think about all of the crazy crap that is hiding in that bag. Chakrams, swords, spells, that kind of thing. So I would like it for Collector to reach in and throw the net, or even just a random object that always does something. So the net would stun, the sword would do damage, the spell would take away meter, that kind of thing. So just pick something out of the bag and throw it. Call it grab bag. It would be hilarious and fun. And then for what he needs, I don't know. Collector was one of those characters that kind of came to the party late, but is now in force. He's a really good character now, and I don't know what he would necessarily need. Outside of, if I had to think, perhaps he could collect moves. What if he grabbed his bag and threw it in front of him, and a projectile hits the bag, and the next time he does that input, he throws the projectile back at the opponent? I think that would be pretty cool, and it would let Collector be more crafty and thievy. Geras doesn't need anything to be better, but we'll talk about the 3, but we'll skip the old options here. We'll skip the old option. For a new attack, I think it would be fun if Geras overclocked himself. If there was some way that he could alter his sand battery or temporal anchor in order to speed up his movements. Let's say it gives him a 25% speed boost while it's active, and maybe it even slows down the opponent, like Reptile's Nimble buff or the Flash with his trait. But when he comes out of it, he becomes slower in every aspect. It takes him longer to go into block. His moves become 50% slower. He basically supercharged himself, and now he needs to wait a few seconds to calm down. That would be a really cool buff with a pretty big drawback that hopefully doesn't make Geras any more broken than he already is. And as for what he needs, air quotes as big as the friggin' Empire State on this one, what if we gave him... let's give him an air grab. Why not? Why not just give him an air grab? Dude has everything else. And then there's the Terminator. Oh boy, the Terminator. If it were up to me, we would have the T-1000 in this game, not the T-800. But it is what it is. With the Terminator, a new attack that he could have involves his old Fatal Blow. Now, the Fatal Blow concept that he has is one of several that is different to how it ends up. he actually had a grenade launcher and used his submachine gun in the old Fatal Blow. So, supposing that he can be like Rambo and pull out a new gun, why don't we either pull out a grenade launcher or pull out the big giant chain gun and have him use that like he does in Terminator 2? May as well get all the movie references that we can. And as for what he needs, I don't think he really needs much. The closest thing I can think of is maybe he gets a buff where he rips the flesh off of his arms, and that gives him stronger punches in exchange for permanently losing 50 points of health. So he becomes a 950 point health character like Sonya and Cassie, but in exchange, all of his punches do more damage. Runners up coming up, we have Cetrion. Cetrion, I think it would be neat to see her use more nature elements, like maybe she summons a tree to hit opponents, or maybe we could even go one step further. She reaches behind her, grabs a tree, and smacks the opponent with a really slow but unblockable full screen projectile. Come on, you know you want to see her emulate Swamp Thing. And as for what she needs, again, I don't think she needs too much. She is a very potent character in her own right already. But if I had to give her something new, I would like to give her something involving that Corona of hers. I believe the Heat Wave attack comes from it already, but I'd like to see it be the focus of several big buffs. Buffs to projectile speed, buffs to armor. Maybe she gains a set of armor. Maybe for a limited time she activates her Elder Goddess powers and becomes unstoppable. But when she is done, she comes out of it woozy because she assumed a mortal form to join this fight, and thus she is left vulnerable. And finally, there's Fujin. And Fujin is interesting because he's only been in 2 games. Mortal Kombat 4 and Mortal Kombat Armageddon before. So what are we going to give Fujin? Well, there isn't too much that you can really give him, per se, that is old. So we'll start with the new. As far as wind moves go, I think he has just about everything that you can imagine. He has pressure bombs, he can manipulate the air, he can skywalk, he can do a lot of it. But there's one thing that we can do with the wind that I don't think Fujin can do. And that is boost his movement speed and allow him to fly. So if Fujin had a proper air dash, not the skywalk, but a proper air dash, or the ability to move faster because of the wind while restricting opponent movement because of the wind, that would be pretty sweet. As for something old, they kind of got all of that covered. First up with the crossbow, and then they replaced his big Devastator sword with the much more fitting Kusanagi. But what if he could throw the crossbow? Just as a funny gag, because in MK4 you could throw the crossbow for ridiculous damage. But in exchange, you lose your crossbow. So what if we gave him that? What if we gave him the ability to throw his crossbow for an unblockable 15% damage attack, but then he loses the ability to do any kind of projectile attacks with his crossbow? And maybe just for fun, it could conflict with wind push, because then you can't have a projectile option to just be like, oh, I don't have my crossbow. Oh, I'll just hit you with wind. As for what he needs, he doesn't really need anything. He just needs, a lot of the people that are saying he's bad, Fujin just requires more work than most other characters, because all of his cancels and combos require more precise timing and practice. He's the kind of character that MK11 doesn't really have, which is a character that you need time in the lab to actually learn all the nuances in. He takes longer to learn than just about everybody else. So that's all I can say that you would need. But if I had to give him a move to maybe help him out, I think it would be fun to give him a move that helps keep him safe, because he's a very unsafe boy. That's all I can think of for this. Don't forget to be awesome, and I'll see you guys when Melina drops.